Redditors who work at remote places like forest officers, oil rig workers, etc. What creepy things have you noticed while at work? I work on North Sea oil rigs on an ad hoc basis, off the coast of Scotland. Wouldn't say anything was particularly paranormal creepy, but it can be very unsettling / weird place. Fog can come rolling in out of nowhere and other rigs you can see off the sides can disappear in front of your eyes. Sometimes you can't see the walkway 6 feet in front of you, or if you're walking over grating you can't see the sea below your feet, about 60 meters down from feck to sea, but you can hear it, albeit muffled. The fog can roll in over the course of a few minutes too, so a perfectly clear day becomes pea soup. You can also feel the rig moving / swaying on high winds, rough seas, even though it's a fixed leg platform. Very unnerving to feel your office swaying when it shouldn't be. My last trip was my first ever night shift, and I found it particularly unsettling as you've got the background noise of the plant, but I walked around the whole rig without seeing another living soul for the whole shift. Usually there are about 130 people on board, although smaller rigs have smaller head counts. Usually once a trip I'm hit by this awareness that you are just very isolated and in the middle of nowhere. Most rigs I've worked on are an arse chopper ride from land, so if things go wrong it can escalate very quickly. We were wrapping up for the day in northern Canada. I'm fueling up the side boom. I'm all by myself at this point, cause I was tired of listening to the laborers whine of the cold, so I told them I would take care of the rest. Think bulldozer with no blade, but a giant metal boom on the side that we use to razor and lower pipe. It's February, so pitch black. I keep hearing some weird sound. I can't quite hear it cause the pump is too loud. I search around a couple times and see nothing. I get in the truck and take off, drive past the front of the side boom to see a cougar sitting on top of a dirt pile 15 feet away. The damn thing was just watching me there and probably could have ended me without me even realizing it. I've never seen a cougar in the wild before, and it's hard to understand just how big they are and how powerful until you see one up close. That thing leaped off the 6-foot pile and probably didn't touch ground for 15 to 20 feet. It's terrifying to think something so big and powerful could just be sitting there deciding if they want to make you dinner. We live in the woods bordering a massive park system in Alberta. We have bears, lynx, moose, wolves, and cougars. The cougars, well, and moose, scare me more than anything else out here. My cougar story: my husband and I were out hiking an old hunting trail, quite far into the park, with our dog. The dog was super big, a Rottweiler / Irish Wolfhound, and very well trained. He sadly passed away at a fairly young age. We'd been out hiking for about 2 hours and stopped for a rest on a fallen log. We'd been sitting for just a few minutes when suddenly the dog sits up and stares intently into the dense brush bordering the path. After a minute, he jumps up and starts growling intensely, hackles up, standing between us and the brush. We don't see a thing, but we know there's cougars in the area, and not much else is so quiet and hidden out there. So we pack up and start hiking back. The dog is super relieved we're leaving and walks alongside us, checking behind us every so often. We hike back for 10 minutes or so, and the dog stops again, staring behind us, and starts growling loudly again. We have bear spray, but no gun, and we figure the cougar is following us now. So we keep hiking back, adrenaline high, bear spray out. It goes like that for roughly an hour. Hike for a while, dog watching our back and occasionally stopping to snarl / growl at whatever he senses that we don't see. The dog stayed tense the rest of the way back and kept checking over our shoulders. But the last half of the hike back home he didn't growl at anything else at least. Still scared the crap out of us both, and we were super grateful that the dog stuck to us instead of running off to chase off the cougar, which ends in them being eaten, but was big and aggressive enough to keep the cougar at bay. Used to be a supervisor for a janitorial company, and a couple times a week I had to go to a middle school and clean their hallway floors and gymnasium with a Zamboni type vehicle that mopped and scrubbed the floor. When I was there I had the whole school to myself. Used to get finished quickly and go to the library and read while eating my dinner. Well, one morning after being there, I get a call from school security and they want me to come in. When I get there I see a police car too. Uh-oh, I think. They ask me a few questions like, did you notice anything out of the ordinary or strange while you were here last night? No, I hadn't. Usually have headphones in. Security then shows me camera footage of someone breaking into one of the classrooms while I was riding the Zamboni not far away. I was there for another 2 hours. Nothing was stolen. But the worst part was they didn't have footage of the person leaving. They didn't go out the way they came in. And police had to sweep the entire school. Never did find out what happened with that one. Did the school have drop ceilings? He called Shamid up into the ceiling. Those don't hold that much weight. Source, was a terror in middle school. I work as a polar bear guard. As in, I escort people across tundra and mountains and protect them from polar bears. I once saw a snowman totem with reindeer antlers coming out of his head. It was deformed, full of bullet holes and rather creepy. I've been fishing out in the Gulf of Mexico, where they have some oil rigs. This rig wasn't being used, from what we knew, so we would get pretty close to it to fish for red snapper. While we were out there, we could have sworn we heard screams of a woman over and over. It was some mess, but the explanation was the wind making the noises as it blew through the rig. Well, that's what we were told, but it totally creeped us the F out. Rigs can make pretty scary noises. I had some shifts on a satellite platform and the wind would make scary noises at night. My mom used to live in a small town in the Cascade Mountains and worked as a forest ranger. The creepiest thing that happened was when the oldest male ranger kept hitting on her and trying to get her to come home with him. Not very out of the ordinary, but many years later, after she left the town, she found out he had been convicted of manslaughter and had killed a young female ranger right before she got hired. She would have probably been his next target. My oldest brother used to work the overpass sprinklers on a golf course. He took me out one time just for fun, and as we were driving uphill on a fairway, a figure of a lady appeared in the headlights at the top of the hill. My brother steered a little to the left of her and kept driving right on by. I stared right into her eyes as we drove by, and she stared back. Her eyes glowed like a cat in the night. As soon as we were out of voice range, I asked my brother what the HL was that. He calmly responded, "Yay. She lives on the golf course and likes to terrorize the workers from time to time. I usually see her out here once a week." Apostrophe. Spent a summer in Wyoming going to BLM land and other remote locations collecting data on bats and herpetofauna. Heard a lot of weird noises like mountain lions screaming, deer snorting, what sounded like owls fighting. Woke up one morning to find 2 bull moose sleeping 20 yards behind my tent. All of this was part of the job until one night a truck was driving towards us when we were on a BLM square in the southwestern part of the state. The truck was going overland, no road, and was slowly driving at us. It stopped about 100 yards away, turned off the lights, and we could see a person get out. They walked a full circle around us at 100 yards away, got back in the truck and turned around. This was after dark and this shadowy figure did a complete circle around us. You could hear them walking through the sagebrush, and I'm sure they could hear us talking. We packed up after that and drove to a hotel an hour away. I called the office and told them I was taking a gun. When we went back out, didn't like having the bear mace as our only defense. Edit. BLM stands for Bureau of Land Management. I used to work in the Gulf of Mexico on oil rigs for years, and it may not exactly be creepy, but I found it really unsettling. In deep, open water, the water itself is really clear, so everyone can plainly see all the tuna and barracudas hanging around the rig waiting for the onboard cook to throw off whatever food waste he needs to. Every once in a while a huge great white shark would swim up from underneath and snatch a tuna, and it really took like less than a second. They're really scary. I worked for a guy that spearfished underneath the rigs out in the Gulf. He said it was perfect since there were tons of fish underneath, and the sharks would never go between the legs. Just wait for a fish to leave. Plus the view was amazing. Looking down and seeing nothing but abyss. He loved it. I can only imagine how scared I would be. There was this moment I had in the middle of the Caribbean where we had to untangle a rope from the engine in the middle of the sea. Getting tossed and turned and dragged by the wind was already rough enough for my novice self. And I only did by looking at the depth measurement tool telling me that we were in about 300 meters depth between islands and land was partially visible. So I jumped in and untangled the line in this clear blue water, and under the boat I see this bigger turtle just meandering along. On meeting eye to eye, it dove immediately into the abyss. I watched for a while as it disappeared as a small dot and hopped back on the boat. I later commented on Journey about how it was interesting that the depth of the water was never past 300 meters, not thinking much of it. Captain gives a confused look, and upon realizing where I had found this information he informs me that the readings are only accurate up to 300 meters and will not read past that. And we're in at least 2 kilometers deep water, if not more. The scale of the abyss hit me in that moment, followed by a huge sinking feeling. It's hard to communicate the scale of such things being that far from solid ground for a landlubber like me. During college, that was located away from major cities. The woods were all around us. That being said, there was a highly rated trail, the Loyal Sock Trail, which was about an hour drive from the university. I invited a friend to come with me as he had never been on an extended backpacking trip, a 50+ mile trail that we intended to backpack over the 4-day weekend. I'm an Eagle Scout who has spent countless hours in the woods and went on backpacking trips consistently throughout my college experience. As many have said before me, you get used to the minor spooky things happening. Coyote howls, raccoons in the middle of the night, even the occasional unknown noise, the scariest thing to find in the woods. However, our people, we were about 20 miles into the trail, and being Pennsylvania where the underbrush and trees line the trails pretty densely, I always walk about 100 meters off of the trail to reduce the chances of me disturbing people disturbing me, especially in the early morning when I choose to sleep in. Following that same strategy, my friend and I go out of our way to be in this amazing spot a good ways off of the trail, where it would even be difficult to see our flashlights from the trail. This spot was on a peninsula where a creek met a river, meaning there was only one way into our camp and only one way out. We start a fire, cook our food, and drink some, but not enough to get either of us drunk. We put the fire out about midnight and head into our individual tents. All is quiet. It is the fall semester, so leaves are on the ground. The moon is brightly shining through the bare trees, and the air is cool. The only noise is the occasional time when I would hear my friend turn over in his sleep. Then, I hear the voices. The voices sounded very close for being on the trail 100+ meters away. I check my watch. 3 AM. Who hikes at 3 AM? We are 20 miles in. I slowly get out of my sleeping bag, slowly unzip my tent, only to see my friend peeking out of his tent in the exact same fashion. He quickly moves his finger over his mouth in an exaggerated hush signal, then use the same hand to frantically motion towards the way of the trail. Then we see them. 4 adults, 3 men and 1 woman, walking directly towards our camp. No lights illuminating their path. They are walking silently at this point. Only one of them has a backpack, an impossibility for the long hike. They were 1/3 of the way through. Being a long trip, you bring wood cutting supplies to chop branches into smaller branches to burn. For me, this was a survival knife. Grabbing the knife, believing it is my only way of defending myself. I'm more disheveled than I ever have been, especially knowing that a knife is barely defense at all. These people walk into our site, sit down by our extinguished fire pit, and just sit there for what felt like an eternity. My friend speaks up and asks what they are doing in our campsite. Without answering the question, they ask if we have any food. Having packed as lightly as possible for the long trip, we had only a few extra Mountain House MRE style meals. I grab one out of my bag and toss it to one of the men. In rapid succession, I ask why they aren't using a light, if they need help finding the trail, and why they are hiking so late. They respond with the following one: "We don't use lights too. We know where the trail is. 3. It is better to hike late at night." Unnerved at this point, my friend asks them to leave. They respond by asking if we want to light the fire and hang out for a bit. No, we do not. They grab their bag, get up, and leave without speaking another word. We watch them leave and take shifts, making sure that they didn't come back. Needless to say, we both got very little sleep that night. When the sun rose the next morning, we finally got real sleep. By the afternoon, when we woke up, It all felt like a weird dream of sorts. The only evidence was a baseball cap that they must have dropped that I have to this day. I have never had something as weird / spooky as that happen in the woods and hope to never have it happen again. In the 8 years since that trip, I haven't been back to the Loyal Sock Trail. Working late at night on a remote mine site. Changing out a switch in a substation on the edge of the pit. Just me and a quiet room full of gently humming transformers. I finish up and head for the door and I see 3 pairs of red eyes staring through the window. Nothing else visible. Just blackness and 3 sets of red eyes. Turns out goats' eyes reflect red at night. And they like staring in windows. The goats who stare at men. Working on ships. There was one night I was on a ship sailing through Alaskan waters. And it happened to be my first night ever seeing northern lights. I can't believe how awesome that was. It made the sky clear. Made the night look like it was dusk. We were able to see clearly for miles. Few buddies and I hit the roof, or what we call Lido deck, at 1 AM just to gaze at it. An hour or so in, there were 6 of us on top. Nearly the entire crew now. A big white spotlight shines at us. We were near land. But where the spotlight was above the water, and it wasn't low enough to be on a ship. This was very high up. It shined on us for about 15 to 20 seconds. Once the light turned off, we looked to see what it was. Saw nothing. No trace of an aircraft or anything. Couple minutes go by and the same light shined on us. This time it was on the other side of our vessel. Above mountains. Still unable to see what it was. We all saw it. We all have never seen any aircrafts hovering above these waters. Especially at 2 AM. We don't know what it was. We think it might have been some sort of silenced aircraft the military was probably doing drills or something. But anyways, that was one of the weirder things to happen out on the ocean. I've worked in Canada's north for a few years now in oil and gas. It's pretty creepy when during night shift you realize a moose has just been standing at the tree line staring you down for an unknown length of time. Or finding bear tracks crossing the tracks you just made 5 minutes ago. Honestly, the silence of a snowy forest in the dead of night 100s of kilometers away from anything is pretty spooky. When your only contact to the outside world is a radio channel nobody's listening to, you feel pretty alone. Might as well be in space.